All righty, boys and girls, we are back with yet another guest host because I don't want to fly solo, but this one is a very special guest host. Welcome to the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your host, Chris. Again, no time for nicknames because that's Alex's department, Condit, and I am joined by, as I said, a very special guest, maybe the most special guest in one way at least. You know him as the Podfather, Patrick Patty Young. Huge to have him on the show. A lifelong Villa fan, and I think most importantly for our purposes, the connector of all of these friends here, or fans in Raleigh that have just become a group chat that gets together in as many as can get together at a time, 10 to 14 or 6 to 10 or whatever may people get together. And it's all because if Pat sees somebody in the Raleigh-Durham area wearing a Villa shirt, he grabs that person and shoves his phone in their face and says, "Give me your number. You're going to be in this group chat." So, Patty, welcome, and I cannot say enough for what you've done for Villa here in North Carolina.
Chris, I am honored to be here. You have truly led a peasant into the podcast palace. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'll be honest with you. I got sick of having better, more insightful, hotter takes, better takes, more insightful tactical analysis on my text feed than I did in the 4 Villa podcasts I listened to. And I'm so grateful I was able to inspire you all to get to do this, because it is genuinely the best Villa podcast this side of the pond, certainly.
Thank you, Pat.
And maybe in really tactical analysis, really anywhere.
That's mostly
as I said to you earlier, I'm honored to be the 4th coolest and 4th most knowledgeable guest on your
pod.
I
said third. I said you're third. And no offense to my brother Mark, but he just got bumped down just because of your stature here in the Raleigh area. But now I do have to do a little bit of housekeeping. Again, special guest, the Podfather, Patty Young, here with us. Your American Villain Voices, the lukewarmest of lukewarm opinions. Please go follow the socials. They're linked in the show notes. Apple, Amazon Music, YouTube. We're on all the Instagrams and Twitters and all those things as well. Facebook. Go check out our interview with Paul Faulkner and Doug Wright, MBE, the High Sheriff of the West Midlands, from a few weeks ago. We have a very special surprise there and a contest, and further updates will be put up on our socials in early February after we consult with our legal department, which also happens to be snowboarding in Japan with Alex presently. So once they get back, we will have a contest put together for that one. But we are here to discuss today the Champions League defeat at Monaco, and I actually had planned to potentially do this entire introduction in French and surprise you with it, but I thought better of it, Patty, in part because my French is broken at best, and I don't know that it would come off. But that was my original plan. But not a great night in Monaco, despite the beautiful stadium and what looked like from social media an unbelievable time for the fans that made the trip from Birmingham or abroad. But a really, really tough defeat, I think. And why don't we just start off, Pat, by talking about the lineup and tactical setup. It was Watkins, not Duran, which I think surprised some people. And MEB got a start. Emi Buendia made a start, which I think surprised a lot of people. Daniel Mallon, as we know, not available due to his being cup-tied for the Calip, the league phase. Pat, what were your thoughts when you saw the lineup card come out?
Well, I was both delighted and surprised to see Buendia in there. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought he really might be able to run at and make mischief in the midfield against a Monaco team that has been really out of form recently. I don't follow them closely, but I saw they hadn't won a match since December or maybe even late November, and had lost to the last place team in Ligue 1 last week. But I think and I was surprised there was no rotation to Duran. I think, listen, it seems like it would be at everyone's advantage to keep both of our excellent strikers well rested. We'll certainly talk more later about the surprising and disappointing decision to play both of them at once. But I thought Durant would have been the better choice there on the day. Ollie had some what is unfortunately becoming a more common occurrence, some terrible misses. But without McGinn, Onana, and Barkley, and I think we'll probably return to that theme too. Buendia, I think, was the best choice.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I liked having Emmy out there. I would have also rather Duran, and I think that's going to affect decisions that are made for this upcoming match that we're also going to discuss. We'll discuss West Ham here after we talk about Monaco. So I think that we're going to see some rotation coming up here on the weekend with West Ham because of the way we played on Wednesday. So we'll get into the match. There really wasn't a whole lot to it in terms of moments that you really want to talk about. It was kind of a blah match for the bulk of it. The biggest thing that I had in the first half, besides Bailey with that mistimed header where he just couldn't get anything on it, that looked like it probably should have been a good chance early on, about 5-minute mark. I was disappointed in that one, and from that moment for Leon Bailey, to me, his work rate just wasn't there on yesterday. We're recording this on Thursday night, and I didn't see it from him the way we have come to expect, at least from previous seasons. And his issues this season have never been an issue of work rate for me, but I think there's a reason he got pulled at 55 minutes, and I think it's because the boss was really unhappy with the effort out there.
I think you're right, Chris. I mean, again, I'm sure we'll get into the post-match press conference a little bit. I've never seen Emery so animated and really angry at his own team. And I really think a lot of that, I don't know this, but I feel like a lot of that might have been directed at Bailey, because as he has the mostly unfair reputation for, but I think maybe on this day it was founded. He had a couple of bad moments. He got in his head, and then he was just lost in the sauce. And really played himself out of the game. That header in the 6th minute was a great opportunity, really borderline sitter, and that was a masterclass in how not to take a header.
Yeah, I mean, he just totally mistimed
nothing
it.
On it.
Yeah.
Nothing on it. Mistimed it, hit it wrong, but everything you can do wrong. So, and then he really, there was a few moments that he had later in the game, but I just didn't feel like he was really one of the poorest performers on the day.
Unfortunately, there weren't too many good performers on the day. Even the guys that I think we're going to talk about did well. There's going to be some critiques that we can have. The moment in the game, the difference in the game was 7 minutes in. The classic Mings mistake, trademarked by Pat Young, was made, led to a corner, and on that corner, Monaco get a header. Emmy makes the first save, but clearly is trying to put it over the bar, which is what he needs to do there, because it's coming in too hot for him to catch it. So he has to put it over the bar. He fails to do so, and it's an easy free header, and Singo just puts it right in the back of the net, no problem. To me, Pat, that one is on Emmy. He's got to put that over the bar for another corner. That for the ask to be for more guys to be crashing in to try and get that, even if they get there, odds are it's going to be an own goal because it's so close to the keeper at that point. At least that's my opinion.
I can certainly agree with the very rare Emmy Martinez mistake. As you alluded to, though, that was a very lazy pass from Mings to Tielemans. Shockingly so, really, and it's that one Mings mistake. I think the boss has a lot of confidence in Tyrone Mings. He did really well in a lot of regards, but playing out of the back and staying composed and making smart passes, not his strongest suit, and it really, really cost us on this day. And that early goal was the difference maker, right? It killed the game. It killed the energy, and I got to give them credit. Maybe we'll come to this later, but they're center midfielders, and I'm sorry I didn't get their names, and if I did, I probably couldn't pronounce them anyway. You probably can. Their two central midfielders and their two central defenders were rock solid, right? They kept their shape, and they just broke up everything we had trying to go on in the midfield. And really, really kept us at bay. The whole rest of the game, even though we had a few bright moments, but Yeah,
I do think, I think if we want to look at the rest of the game there, and by the way, it's Kamara and Zakaria, so not too hard on the pronunciations there. But the
I was
rest
too lazy to look it up because I was worried I wouldn't be able to pronounce it.
That's
that
okay.
shows you what I can.
That's okay. The rest of the game really, again, there aren't too many moments here except that we'll talk about a few, but the rest of the game, Villa dominated the ball, right? Created what looked to be decent chances, or at least what should have developed into decent chances. I mean, the ball was coming into dangerous areas, and we were finding, I think, especially if you consider what Emery said in the postgame, we were finding the avenues that we wanted to travel down and make our opportunities from. But again, the end product just isn't there. And one of the biggest misses for me was right before the half. I think right before the half, Watkins should have had that. That should have been a goal. I hate to be that guy, but you've got, especially in a Champions League game where you need a result to try and get top 8. You've got to bang that in. You've got to score. And he failed. I think he made it too easy on the keeper. Now that's easy for me to see. I'm a fat guy that hasn't played professional soccer, so I don't mean to say that I could have scored that. I'm not that guy. But I think he made that far too easy on the keeper. The keeper does do a nice job of closing the angle a little bit, but I still think that Ollie has to do better there.
Absolutely. And, you and I have talked about this. You and Alex have talked about this on the pod. Ollie is best when he's responding and reacting to a moment and it doesn't think and just pulls the trigger.
Yep.
When he's got even a moment to line it up, he fluffs it. He fluffs his lines, and he did it again. I don't want to be that guy either. He's an incredible player. He's been one of the best players and assets the team has had in the last 5 or 10 years, but by far. But it's becoming more of a recurring theme, and the opportunities were few and far between in this match, and he has to make that one. I made a note about one other. Bailey had an opportunity right at the top of the 6th to shoot. He passed it off to Rogers, and Rogers skied it in the 18th minute. That's all I had in the entire first half for opportunities.
And Rogers didn't have a great game, right? If we're going to talk about guys who didn't play well, Rogers and guys who were singled out by Unai Emery, Rogers was among them. I mean, it's impossible not to be disappointed in his performance. And again, we're seeing some things that are getting to be a little too commonplace. And I love Morgan Rogers. He has been incredible. He's an amazing player, and he will be an amazing player as he grows. But what we're seeing now, these giveaways in the middle of the park cannot happen. I mean, he really struggled, and you have to give Monaco credit. Like they clearly did well to defend, but it's just Rogers didn't have it on Wednesday, and I don't know how you can get him going better. He cannot continue to turn the ball over the way he is. That it can't happen.
I think that's a great point, and I if I recall, you'll recall more than I would perhaps, but I also think he was on not on the list of folks that the boss said were doing their job, right? I think he might have been one of the ones that was being called out as well. He doesn't appear like he wants to play on the left, right? He's always drifting into the center, and that's causing no matter whether that's called for or not. Sometimes it works out.
Yeah.
A lot of times it didn't. I also thought not just Rogers' play was, I think, poor on the day. Bailey, and Buendia could never get on the same page, right?
Yeah.
I don't. They weren't playing well together. I'm not sure they played together at all this year, except at Bodymoor Heath.
Yeah.
So I want to give them a little bit of grace on that. But this was a really, in a lot of ways, a must-win match. And so the fact that they played themselves out of the game by not being able to work effectively together to advance the ball for the midfield.
Yep. So let's talk about what I think was one of the biggest moments in the game, and we alluded to it earlier. 55 minutes. On comes Duran, but not for number 11, for number 31. All right. Now, you just talked about how the middle of the park was getting congested because Rodgers is always wanting to drift in. My concern, as soon as I saw it, was Bailey is the sole provider of width. In the front, obviously you have your right and left back who sort of play as wing backs, but right and left back can provide width as well. But you're going to bring on John Duran with Morgan Rodgers already, and Ollie Watkins. Now you've got three guys trying to play in the same general area of the pitch. And we've talked about this many, many times. Ollie Watkins doesn't play well with a second striker. With an actual second striker, it's not the system he wants to play in, and that's okay. But we have to accept it. Duran and Watkins together, unless Unai Emery can unlock something that no one else has, it's not going to work. They have to play opposite each other.
I think that's exactly right, and I absolutely give Emery credit. He's the anti-Arteta, where he takes responsibility when it's appropriate.
Nice.
He said, look, I shouldn't have done it. I know it didn't work, and it just doesn't work. And he's tried it now at least 3 times that I can think of. There may have been a 4th or 5th in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't appear to work. And as you said, it kind of had those knock-on effects of other people playing de facto or de jure out of position.
Yeah.
And it showed. It was just there was no service, there was no width.
We immediately lost our shape. I mean, immediately the shape is gone. What shape we had out the window. And Emery admitted as much in the post, which again I appreciate. Like you said, and the problem though is once you make that substitution, you're kind of stuck at least for a little bit until you can figure out another option. And we are also limited by injury, in terms of what can be done. But I thought it's a rare time that we do this, but I thought Emery absolutely pushed the wrong button there, and it was not good. It didn't go well at all. We never threatened goal again that I remember. After he came on, it had the opposite effect of what usually happens when Duran comes on, where he injects some life into the squad, and immediately we start ripping shots from 30 yards out and that sort of thing. So I don't think we're going to see that again unless they do some serious work on the training ground, like you said. Like I said, the rest of the half was really after that. Is there anything you've got that you want to discuss from the last half hour?
Yeah, just just overall, but then really came clear in the last half hour. I mentioned this briefly before. We really missed McGinn. We really missed Onana. We really missed Barkley. I hate to say. Having Tielemans having to play farther back, I think really hurt. I'd like to get your take on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think having him play a little farther forward has been a really big improvement and has been key to our recent better run of form. Certainly was true in the Arsenal match before Onana had to come out. But that just not enough in the midfield, really. And having those 3 guys out is it's hard to keep all the other plates spinning when those guys are not available.
Well, Onana's out for at least the next 2. I'm not sure about McGinn and Barkley. I think they've been back a little bit in training, but I don't know that they're ready, But Onana's – I saw this evening, Onana's out for at least 2 more. So that's not good. We just need more depth. We have depth, but now without the injuries, we're losing it. And I think that one of the reasons you're seeing Monchi and Emery trying to make these additions is last year it was all about we need more squad depth, right? We just don't have enough depth. Now, if you take away the injuries, we have squad depth, at least at several positions, particularly left back, most of the midfield, if it weren't for those 3 injuries across it, right? And and then obviously at striker we have depth. But I think what you're seeing now is the quality of player, right? We Unai Emery has gotten the most he can out of this group, I think. And I think what we need to start adding, and what they are trying to add, is more quality, not just quantity. So they're looking for very specific targets that can make an impact, like a Daniel Malen. So I think that's somebody that they've had for at least a while, where it's not just depth, it's real quality that we can, and I expect Unai Emery to really unlock him. I mean, he's got a nose for goal. He can't cross a lick from what I can see, but he's really got a nose for goal. So I expect Emery to really unlock him and use that pace. And I know I kind of jumped away from the match here a little bit, and use that pace to get him to the end line for that classic pullback to a Duran or a Watkins or a Rodgers, for what hopefully we'll start coming to see easy goals. But that's for another day. That's for another pod. I think that what we're seeing now is we have depth. Now what we need is more quality of depth. So you're seeing the difference between a Champions League side that got in being fourth in the league and Champions League sides that have a real shot at winning. And I think if we're being honest, Aston Villa doesn't have a real shot at winning.
Absolutely. Great. Great take. No notes other than just really emphasize. I can't say enough good things about the development work that Emery and Monchi are doing. I mean, you and Alex talked a lot about it. These guys are all undervalued. They're underdeveloped. They're big. They're fast, and they've got incredible amounts of raw talent.
Yeah.
And in Monchi and Emery's hands, I think we're building that base to be a perpetual top 4, top 6 team. We're really not quite there yet. We, as you said, Emery has gotten the absolute most out of what the guys we got, as could be imagined. And I'm old enough and been a fan long enough to the Jolien Lescott and Rudy Gestad days are not that far in the past.
Hey, didn't he score a goal on his first? Rudy Gestad, didn't he score?
He scored against Arsenal in the first match of the season.
No, it was Bournemouth, wasn't it? It was Bournemouth, wasn't it?
Was it Bournemouth? I thought it was Arsenal.
He hit that terrible header that bounced, but it still went in. I have a vivid memory of that one.
That was the only way he was going to score. But that was the year we got relegated to. So.
Yes, it was.
In any case, it's all dream time, and let's get back to this turd of a game and move on to West Ham.
So the good points, Pat. Do you have any good points from this? Is there anything that you want to highlight that you thought was a good thing that happened on Wednesday?
Buendia was good. I don't think he was good enough. He was getting harried and hectored and bossed off the ball by those midfielders that I mentioned that I can pronounce, but now I've forgotten their names. I just think he showed his limitations for what we're trying to do. And so it put him in the shop window because he could really probably come good for some other teams going forward. And I thought that was a net plus. I would also say Dean and Konza were good.
Yeah.
But everybody, something we didn't talk about specifically, everybody was, my notes said leggy at one point and then legless.
Yeah.
So they clearly were tired and you didn't see that. The energy was not there. So not a lot of bright points. Do you have any, Chris?
Emi Buendia was the only one Emi Martinez played fine outside of the one mistake, but Emi Buendia was the highlight for me. He played well, I thought, especially given how few minutes he's played this season. I think coming into the game, he had only played 5% of available minutes. Shout out who scored on that one. I think it was something like that. It wasn't far off that. It may not have been exactly 5%, but so for a guy that has not played many minutes, I think that was as good a showing as you can ask for. I have a lot more bad points. The only thing, like I mentioned it before, Villa were getting the ball into good positions. We were able to progress through the midfield in a lot of situations and get the ball into a good spot. And again, which is what has sort of become a running theme here when the team has struggled. There's just no end product at the end of the line. And whether that's Rodgers, whether that's Bailey, whether that's Watkins, then the mess, I almost swore there, then the mess with Duran and Rodgers and Watkins all trying to play together, where you just have three guys running into each other, not quite literally, but not far off it. It just never worked up front. So that was a big thing. We already talked about Duran Watkins together. Doesn't work. Scrap it. I don't want to see it again until they do some serious work on that. And I hate to do this because he's been such a good soldier for the club and he's such a great player. Tyrone Mings is killing this team in the attack, and he just doesn't play the way we need to play out of the back. And for whatever reason, the biggest frustration for it is he does not see that ball to his left. Like, he just doesn't see Ian Matson standing in space. Just get it to him and let him run with it. You know, you've got three guys converging on you, right? A center back who's not particularly a good ball carrier.
Yeah.
Get the ball over to the guy who can run like a deer. You know, what are we doing? You know, look to your left, man. Instead, he tries to go around three guys, gets the ball taken off, and we're going the other way, obviously. Again, Tyrone Mings, I love you very much. You're a very special player. You're a club legend, in my opinion, just because of what you've done for this club and what you've meant for this club. But good Lord, see the ball to your left. Good Lord, pass.
I mean, listen, after the being full kit, calling his mom at the train station on the payphone after the championship final, he's a club. He really is a club legend for everything he's done for this club. I am convinced fully after that match, he cannot do what Emery needs him to do in terms of playing out the back. And we don't have a lot of other options right now. He is good he is really good at some things, using his head to clear the ball, using his body to hold up strikers. But we're just going to be limited until we can get someone else in there, and that's kind of bottom line for me.
Yeah, he is much more physical than Pau. He's much more physical than Pau. Yeah. But the limitation on attack, and when you see it is a game like that where we're really struggling to get going in attack, and it just everything slows when we can't get the ball out and get the ball wide and get it going quickly. And so that's what I've got for. And all in all, just not good enough. Not good enough in the least, because that was a struggling side at Monaco that we saw. I know we had to travel, but it's not like the atmosphere was all that great. There were probably nearly as many Villa fans in the doggone place than there were Monaco fans. I don't. You know, that was 3 points that should have been had, and they didn't even manage to get a goal.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It was a huge missed opportunity, especially if we don't manage to get 8th or above in the Champions League table. And I'll let you talk about some of the scenarios there. Yeah. But having 2 new additional fixtures in the middle of February is going to be absolutely brutal.
Yep.
It's something we desperately don't need. As a quick aside, I do have to mention, I shared this with you earlier, the Monaco royalty banned alcohol for the day to keep the Villa fans at bay. And I think it worked, right? It was about half and half Villa fans, but the crowd was dead.
It was quiet. I mean,
it was like you could hear a pin drop. I heard it's a beautiful spot too, but no energy in the house.
Yeah, I mean, regarding the alcohol being banned, again, I say I thought the fascists lost World War II. What are we doing here? We're supposed to be free. You know,
it's ridiculous, honestly. It's ridiculous.
Come on. But so I do want to talk about, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, Unai Emery's post-game press conference was the angriest by a lot, and a lot that I've ever seen him. And he didn't specifically call out players, but he didn't mention players intentionally when he talked about guys doing their job. There was a whole list of players he left off. And when asked what made him so upset about the way they played, he kept pointing to his temple. For those of you who are on audio, he didn't say anything. He just pointed to his temple, meaning mentality, right? So I don't want to. I would not want to be anywhere near that training ground with the way he was raging. He is mad, and I like I said earlier, I expect there to be major changes, or at least as much as he can to the side going into West Ham.
He was hot, buddy. You're exactly right, and I think our injuries leave somewhat limited options, but he's definitely gonna try some new things because I think he's got several players who just need a mental reset, as you said.
Yep. Yeah. And like I said, I think one of them is Leon Bailey. I think that was one of the guys that he was most upset about. There's the reason that Bailey came off at 55. I don't think that was Leon Bailey's best day by a long shot, and I think Unai Emery is pretty upset about it. So that leads us to the larger implication on the season, talking about the Champions League. Villa now sit after today's games, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to record tonight. After today's matches, Villa sit 9th on 13 points, behind by Leverkusen on goal differential by 1. It's largely out of their hands whether or not they qualify for top 8. They have to beat Celtic no matter what. Outside of that, it's beat Celtic and get some help. And now I was looking at social media before the game, or before the recording here, and I don't remember who said this, but there was a Villa fan that wrote, if we'd beaten Monaco 1-0 and lost to Bayern 1-0, we'd be in the same spot we are now. So I don't know why everyone's complaining. I can't disagree more. You did the hard part.
Yeah.
But we did, we beat Bayern 1-0. So then you have to beat Monaco, right? That mindset sucks.
I totally agree. I mean, I remember you guys, and I was right there with you. I want to be real clear. We're predicting 7-8 points, right? And maybe trying to squeeze in 24th. Yeah. Once we beat Bayern, it's like, exactly to your point, it's like we could beat anybody. Yeah. I mean, honestly, and if we played the way we did that day, or against Bologna when you and Alex were over there, we should have been able to win the matches we lost, no question.
Yes. I mean, sure, based on results alone, but you did the hard one. Then you have to pick up the easy ones. That's a poor excuse for not getting the job done. But so anyway, the big thing is you got to beat Celtic. Of the teams on 13, outside of Leverkusen, Villa have higher goal differentials by at least 2 goals. Okay. So I'm only going to really worry about the teams in front. What Villa need, we need a Celtic win, a Leverkusen draw or loss, and they are home to Sparta Prague. So a draw or loss by Leverkusen, a draw or a loss by Atletico Madrid, and they're away at Strasbourg, a Milan draw or loss away at Dynamo Zagreb, or an Atalanta draw or loss away at Barcelona, and Villa are in if they beat Celtic. So there's a fairly large group of teams behind Aston Villa that are within striking distance of that 8th spot. So I think take care of business, hope for one of those in front of you, and nothing else matters, right? If you take care of business and win, that's all you can do. But from a larger point, all right, we were all kind of unsure about how this Champions League format would work. And I think if you were to ask the Champions League people, UEFA, this is ideal, right? You've got 16 teams all in this here, right? That are might not be quite 16, but you've got 8 teams that have a real shot at finishing in that 7 or 8 spot. And the amount of drama that's going to generate on the next set of match days is exactly what they want. And you're talking about table watching and all that kind of stuff. This worked perfectly for them.
You couldn't be more right. I admit I was a bit of a skeptic, but it's been terrific. It's real. You're exactly right. It's March Madness vibes with 8 teams on the bubble for one spot.
Yep.
You can't beat that kind of excitement. And I appreciate you taking the time to kind of lay it out. We basically have 4, assuming we can get the job done at home.
We have to win. Yeah. Nothing happens if we don't win. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that goes without saying. And look, we really, if the bottom line is that we can't beat Celtic at home, we don't deserve to be
top
anywhere, in my opinion. That's a must win. I'm not saying they're pushovers, but I do watch some Celtic, and we outclass them at every position.
We should. I mean, no offense.
No, they're great for Scotland for sure.
Yeah.
But no, we should win that. And I would have bit your arm off to get in those playoff spots, but now that I'm seeing our form and how tired we are and the injuries, we really got to get that automatic spot. And then somebody, I think it was Alex actually from Japan, in the group chat earlier, helped me understand that this is not reseeded, right? The seeding matters.
Seeding matters to an extent, yes. Yep.
All those teams like Barcelona have something to play for.
Yeah. You want to finish 1 or 2. Yeah, you want to finish 1 or 2. And so they're going to want to keep going, because the seeding matters based on who gets home and all that for the knockout stages. So it's like eventually, I think at the quarters, it becomes a random draw, not as we are normally used to, or I should say more like we're normally used to. So it after this round, after the initial knockout round, it'll be a random draw. I was looking this up for this podcast tonight. So, so it is important. Like Barcelona probably isn't going to play the kids. They're probably going to continue to try to win. So that goes in our favor here. We've got it, but Villa have to win. But we will cover that on another podcast.
Yes.
But so that brings us to Graham Potter's West Ham, and I'm gonna do something really fancy here. Get ready for that. Look at that. Look at that production right there. Sorry for those of you who are audio only. Wait, that's match recap. Dong and I. Oh, look at me. Match preview. There we go. It's almost like this isn't my normal job. So Graham Potter and the West Ham 11. We just saw them 16 days prior to our next match, with
That's
them
right.
on January 10th. FA Cup 2-1 win. It was not by far our best win of the season, but it was a win. And Graham Potter was on the touchline. Worth noting, Unai Emery will not be on the touchline for this one. So he's facing a 1-game touchline ban for his accumulation of red cards. Since that time, they defeated Fulham 3-2 in an absolutely bonkers game that you could argue that Fulham should have at least gotten a point out of, if not all 3. But that thing was bananas. And then they got absolutely undressed by Crystal Palace. It was closer than I think it should have been until West Ham gave up a late penalty. But West Ham never threatened the goal, hardly at all. I mean, they had a few shots blocked, but I think they only attempted something like 5 or 7 shots, 0 on target. The entire span of the game, largely outside of about 10 to 15 minutes, was spent in the Palace end with Crystal Palace just peppering West Ham with chance after chance after chance. And I don't know what to make of this team. And Alex and I talked about this 2 weeks ago. This roster's a mess. I said it before. I have nothing else to add. It's a Frankenstein monster of players with no cohesion and no idea of how they're going to play together. And I think this should be a Villa win. On paper, it should be. And I'd be disappointed in anything less.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're totally right, Chris. I think 6 starters are out with injury or suspension.
Yep.
Bowen, Antonio, Fulkrug, Somerville, and then
Yep.
they only have one senior center back available.
Right.
And Max Kilman. I've got a buddy who's a West Ham fan, and shout out Max Benzettel, and he said that they are seriously talking. The rumor mill is strong that he's going to play 3 academy players, or at least have them available on the bench. I mean, I think Graham Potter's looking for answers here.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a good chance it's going to be a highly experimental lineup.
Yeah.
I do think they're at the point where they're not going to get relegated and they're not going to get Europe. So they can start trying some things. And I think that creates an opening for us to really get a couple goals early and take care of business.
Yeah. So West Ham, just to let everybody know, they're 14th in the table on 26 points with a negative 16 goal differential. And if you listen to the FA Cup preview pod or watched it, and this was obviously not under Graham Potter. This is under Lopetegui, but still, they don't score a lot of goals and they concede a lot of goals. So that's a pretty bad combination to have. But they are likely going to finish safe because the bottom is so low. Ipswich 16 points, Leicester 14, and then Southampton pretty much already relegated at 6 points. So I do think that for Graham Potter, the rest of this season is going to be about seeing what he has and seeing what he can do with it. Because like Danny Ings is going to probably start. I don't know. And that means he's probably going to get a goal, probably on a bike kick or something like that. But I want Villa to come out and really like take this game by the throat from the start and just put West Ham to the sword and make this as easy as you can for 90 minutes, because we need it for the confidence, number one, and we need it for the players to be able to, I'm not saying switch off, but if you're up 3-0 and there's 15 minutes left, you might could take your foot off the gas a little bit. And there's the added, by the way, drama that I forgot to put in the rundown, Pat. We need to talk about the fact that Unai Emery and Monchi are pissed at West Ham for the John Duran leak. So
who can blame them?
I wouldn't be surprised if Emery really wants this one badly and wants to embarrass West Ham a little bit, because the John Duran offers, if that's what we're going to call them, the insulting offers that West Ham have made to try and buy a player that's worth no less than 80 million. And if we're being honest, probably more. And they're offering 57, and then when that gets rejected, we'll come up to, or I'm sorry, they offered 45 or whatever it was, 40. And then they said, no, okay, all right, we'll come up to 57. Like, this is the most ridiculous negotiating I've ever seen. And the leaks are either coming from West Ham or Duran's agent. And I can't see them coming from Duran's agent, because it does him no good to put out there that offers are coming in at less than his value. And there isn't a legitimate team or person on earth that thinks John Duran is worth anything less than 75, 80 million. There's just not.
I could make a strong argument that he's not worth less than Grealish. We got what we got for Grealish, 100 million. And there's a lot of chitter chatter that's really the range this summer for him. I would honestly probably let him go for that amount. But 45 or 57 is insulting.
Yeah. It was a joke, for that to be put out there. So I do think that Emery, to an extent, may really want to, put them, really embarrass West Ham here if he can, because he was clearly not happy in his pregame Monaco press conference when that came up, or they didn't even allow it to come up. He just stared at the floor. And somebody, presumably a Villa staffer, said, "We will not be addressing any transfer rumors. We're just going to talk about the game." And they were absolutely talking about the fact that West Ham had leaked that they offered 57 for Duran at that point. So I look forward to it. I think it's a chance to get a big 3 points here for the Villa. And with that said, I'll take my lineup here, Pat. like I said, I think we're going to see some changes as much as is possible. I've got Emi Martinez in goal, which is a given. Cash, Kansa, Mings, again, out of necessity for that. And then Ian Matson at left back, even though Dean has played well, but I think this is a good opportunity to spell him. In the defensive midfield, this is where I make a major change. How about Boharde, who we've been calling Bogard incorrectly for the last, year or whatever, and Kamara, and then Mullen, Tielemans, JJ. I think that because of how upset Emery was at Rodgers, that there's a chance you see him sit, and you have Tielemans coming well forward and playing as an actual number 10 with JJ out wide. The other thing you can do is put Morgan Rodgers again out wide if Rodgers were to come in, and then Tielemans can play a little bit further back, which would allow Rodgers to move in that central channel where he likes to go. But it would kind of clog up the midfield in the way I've got it set. And then Duran up top. That's my lineup. That's what I think I would go with. I don't know that Emery's going to make all those changes, but based on his presser, who knows?
I didn't have most of that, but as I think about it, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's plausible. I mean, Boharde looked like he was totally up for it against Arsenal. Played really well.
Yeah.
And Kamara had an okay game, but really didn't cover himself in glory. Matson played in that cup tie that you mentioned a couple weeks ago and looked good against West Ham.
Yeah.
I think he gives us a good threat down that side and can really pick at what is a real weakened West Ham defense.
Yep.
Bombing forward. So yeah, I'm not sure that you can leave Rodgers and Kamara both out, which is what I think your lineup did.
No, I've got Kamara out there. I've got Kamara in as a defensive mid. Yeah, I've got Boharde and Kamara playing a pivot, and then
like a double pivot.
Mm-hmm. And then
they play a lot better in that double pivot. I love it, and I think you called this out several times when it's Kamara and Onana. Obviously, Onana's not available.
Right. So I've got Boharde and Kamara playing a double pivot with Mullen and then Tielemans up top, like I said, as a true number 10, where he used to play at Leicester. But I'm not sure. That's the biggest change. I just was trying to figure out a way that he sits Rodgers, but I don't think it's going to happen. So
to your point, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. Sorry.
More likely lineup is probably it's going to be Tielemans and Kamara and Tielemans, and then Mullen, Rodgers, and JJ across the top with Duran again up top. So I think that's really what we're probably going to see, because I think the player that has, in my opinion, has no shot of getting on the pitch is Leon Bailey.
Yeah.
So
I can see that, and I'd be really excited to see that. I think that could have some real. I mentioned earlier that having Tielemans being able to play a little bit farther forward to be maybe relieved of some of his defensive obligations I think it's going to be real crucial breaking them down early, like you said, and getting up a couple goals. So you want to start with your score prediction, Chris?
Yeah, I've got it 3-1 Villa, only because we never keep clean sheets.
Yeah. So let me ask a question. At this stage, so this could – that's tough. I'm going to go 2-1 Villa.
All right. If it's not a win, I'm going to be disappointed. And look, I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. I may be wrong about this one. I was wrong about Monaco, for God's sake. I think I had it 2-0. But this team West Ham is not good enough. Like I said, if you watch that Crystal Palace game, I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched the extended highlights and then read the recaps of it. I mean, it was they got played off the pitch by Crystal Palace. In London, so if they can do that, we have to be able to do that. And like I said, we need the 3 points here if we want to get where we want to go at the end of the season. And Europe, and ultimately Champions League is really what we want, but like Europe at the very least, So
No,
do you have
no
anything to add
doubt. I
on
will. I will.
this
Go ahead.
one? I said, do you have anything to add on this one?
Yeah, I'll take my. At this point, I would take some cold Thursday nights in Kazakhstan.
That's right.
And the, back in the champion, avenge our loss to the Greeks from last year. No, but honestly, you're exactly right. These are exactly the kind of matches we have to win if we want to get where we're trying to go. Exactly as you said. Yep. Who are your goal scorers? Because I've
Duran. It's going to be Duran.
I have Ramsey and Duran.
I got Duran. I've got Mullen on his debut, and nice. I've got JJ as well. Yeah, so that's what I like for them. Like I said, Danny Ings on a bike kick or something, just something stupid. So
Suchek kills us sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Paqueta is he always does well against Philly. He's a super good player. He's probably like a lone bright spot sort of thing going right now for them. But it could be any of those guys. I just know we're not going to keep a clean sheet because we never do. And now we will infiltrate the Villarati and talk about some transfers. Andres Garcia is in for about 5 million, 6 million pound. Bade has stalled, it looks like, potentially. Carlos is having a medical done in Turkey. And Emi Buendia has been offered a deal from Leeds. He's not been offered by the club to go to Leeds, but Leeds have reached out to try to get Buendia for, I think, about 15 million pound. And I think if Villa weren't in the injury crisis they were in right now in the midfield, I think that deal might get done. I just don't know that they can let it go at the moment because we need bodies. And that's not to say I've said it on this pod. I love Emi Buendia. I thought he was a terrific player. I think he's a terrific player. He's not quite the same since he had the ACL, and he's just probably not quite good enough to be where we want to get to. But you want to talk about a guy that was really playing some terrific soccer before the injury. He looked great in that summer lead up to that season. And you can tell he just doesn't have the same quickness on the ball that he once did. You would expect it, right? But so I do think that if they can get some guys back and healthy, that Buendia could be going here in the last few days of the window. But so those are the things right now. We need Bade to come in. I said it on the last pod. He's a prototypical Unai Emery center back. He's exactly what he wants to play. So that's the one that needs to get done here before the window closes. Patty, you have any thoughts on any of those guys or any other rumors that you've seen?
No, I just think if Bade comes in, Buendia goes out, I think he'd be great for Leeds. You're exactly right. I want to take just a minute to say you and I both saw him in the summer series last year. I was in DC, you were in Philadelphia. He looked incredible. Absolutely. Yeah. Him and Jaden Philogene both. Yeah. And I think they're both going to come good for other folks. They're not quite at the level we need them to be. Yeah. I think Daniel Mallon's going to be a great signing as well. I'm excited. I hope he opens his account as you predicted, but otherwise, no notes.
Now we're going to get to a part that I wanted to do, and this is unrelated to Villa actually today. It's the demanding of apologies, and it is regarding our rivals, or not really rivals, but Tottenham Hotspur. They had a match recently here in the Premier League that didn't exactly go their way. I think would be a good way to put it, right? They lost 3-2 to Everton. Obviously a big loss for Tottenham, and not exactly a big threat from Everton, in terms of threatening the league and all that. A match that you would expect Tottenham to win. Son went over to clap the home fan, or the traveling fans, I should say, and there have been videos on Twitter now of just terrible abuse being heaped on this guy. And I understand as an American that it's different in England and in Europe, with in terms of the things that people are comfortable saying to players, because that has sort of crept into America, but not near to the extent that it is over there. But if there's anybody that would be above reproach to me, it would be Son. Um, this is a man who has wasted his life for a club that has won him 0 trophies, and he's a world-class player. And he could have gone elsewhere. He could have gone to another club. He could have demanded a sale. He could have gone at any number of other places. He has stayed, and to be treated that way. The example I'll use is as a Cleveland Browns fan, right? The Browns are awful. They are a terrible team, a terribly run organization. They're awful. That would be akin to Browns fans just hurling abuse at Nick Chubb, who, again, to me would be like pretty much beyond reproach, like, yeah, from an on and off the field standpoint. Until I'm proven wrong, he hasn't done anything wrong. So I couldn't see that happening in Cleveland, and that team only won 3 doggone games last year.
I totally join you in demanding an apology. You mentioned briefly what a world-class player Son is. By many accounts, he is the nicest guy in the league, right? In terms of how he treats the other players, the fans in the community, the North London community. It's really unconscionable to go after the guy who's had, as you said, every opportunity to go demand more money and go elsewhere, but he's stuck with Tottenham, and that's his payback. England, I hate to say it, but I do think some of it's, probably racism. Spain and Eastern Europe are worse, but England's got a sad history of that. But I don't ever remember that kind of abuse getting heaped on Paul McGrath back in my day.
Yeah.
And he was Irish and black. So right. It really is shocking, honestly, by any standard, that such a great player and such a great person would get that treatment. And an apology is demanded and expected.
He appeared, I don't know if this is the case, but he appeared to be crying as he walked away. And so, like, if I were Son, he would never do it because he's too good of a man. I would walk into the director's office and say, "Hey, I'm out. Give me a deal. I'm out of here. I don't need this. Send me to somewhere near the top of the table where I can actually win something." And like I said, nobody deserves that, but least of all him.
Definitely.
So I was really disappointed in that, and I have to call that out, even though it's not related to the Villa, because I feel like at times, and this isn't just soccer fans or football fans, I feel like at times people forget that these are actual human beings. They're not just robots in a jersey. Like that. Can you imagine someone showing up to your job and yelling that kind of stuff at you? No, and you just have to take it. No. So, Tottenham fans, apologize and be better, please.
Amen.
All right, Patty. Well, anything else that you want to add on your inaugural podcast appearance?
Listen, just to say that it's, as I said at the outset, it's an immense honor to be on the pod. One of my very favorite things in life is talking football or soccer, and especially with you. So thank you for the opportunity to do it, and looking forward to having Alex back. And you guys just continue to improve, and the podcast continues to grow. And I can see a day in the near future where this is the biggest podcast, certainly in North America. I do want to put in a plug for the North America Villa meetup, which is in Charlotte, right down the road from us here in Raleigh, Charlotte, North Carolina. There'll be up to at least 500 villains from all over Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Our North Carolina president, Mike Smoke, owns a brewery, and a damn fine one I call Middle James. and that's where a lot of the events will be. Please try to make it out if you can.
Nicely done, Patty. We'll see if we can cut that up for socials.
There you go.
All right, Pat. Well, thanks so much for coming on with us. I appreciate your help and your knowledge and your takes. And I will continue to farm out people to, maybe try and take my job from me. Alex is going to listen to these and watch these when he gets back and realize that he can do a lot better.
I'm excited to see how much longer is Alex out, like a week and a half, week.
He's got let's see, a couple more days. He'll be back in about 6 days.
All right, so you've only got two. You got one or two more. I can't wait to see who you get next.
One, yeah. That's we'll see.
All right,
Patty.
Take care.